Welcome back to the Candy Color Studio. Okay, I have something very, very exciting for you today. No, seriously, I have never had this many wonderful ladies on an episode before. I get to hang out with them every month, but I've never got to pull them all on Insta or on Podcast Land and YouTube at the same time. So this is going to be really, really fun. I'm super excited to introduce you to our Candy Club Collective show, put on by 25 of our Candy Colored Club members. And for those of you that this is a new thing, we are an art business membership, mastermind, community, whatever you want to call it. But these are amazing ladies that are all artists and creatives, and we get together and we work on things together once a month, and we are going to have a small work show. So we are super excited to introduce to you some of the pieces that will be available on October 1st. And every piece in the show will be, it's small. So it's going to be 10 by 10 or smaller. And all the pieces will be in two price points, $150 or $200. And the exciting thing is we will be releasing them at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on October 1st to our email lists. So if you're not on my email list, get on there. If you're not on an email list of some of these ladies, get on there, because then you'll get multiple reminders and lots of goodness from here on out from these fabulous ladies. So please make sure that you sign up for some email lists after listening to this. I'm telling you, you're going to have a hard time deciding how many of us you want to have in your email list box or your email box, because they're all amazing. Okay, so today we're going to bring you little snippets, okay? We're going to be talking about the mediums that we're using, the subjects that we have created, the why we paint, what comes behind all of this, the tools we're using. You're going to get a studio tour. There's all kinds of things going on. So I'm super excited. There are 16 of us online right now, and we're just excited to be with you. So ladies, welcome. Thank you for being here. We are actually going to start with, we're going to talk about mediums, okay? And Hannah and I are talking about it, and I'm going to start. So just so you know, we are recording this. For those of you that are listening in podcast land, we are recording this for YouTube as well. And so I would totally recommend that you go watch the video, because then you can actually see the pieces that are going to be in the show. So here's one of the pieces that I'm going to have. Oh. Okay, so I have these mini pieces that I'm bringing, and this one, for example, is called For You, For Me, Forevermore. So each painting has the song title on the back, okay, and they come with a mini easel. So it's a circle, it's a 4-inch circle, 4-inch diameter circle. There's your little easel. Again, go watch YouTube. You will love to see these in person. And they're all framed. And for those of you that like my circles, this is a mini version of that. So basically, I'm going to tell you about the mediums that I use. So most of you know that I paint in oil, but these particular pieces, what I've done, my husband actually creates these small canvases, and I paint everything on wood. So this is a wood panel that's been cut, and basically we've got a frame on there. And then I, of course, gesso it. This is my gesso that I like to use. It's a master gesso from Dick Blick. I actually have a link to it on my website. You can check it out. It's nice and big. I can lift it right now because I've used a lot of it. And then after I gesso it, I gesso the entire piece of wood, and then I use a gold paint, and it's actually called Liquid Leaf. And again, I have a link to it on my website under tools. And I paint that on the frame, and then the rest of it is all oil, okay? And the oil paint that I use is the Artisan line by Winsor & Newton, okay? And I love these water mixable oils because I don't need to use solvents. I just use water to mix and water and soap to clean, and it's very simple. And if you know me very well, you know that my life is crazy and I like to simplify. So this helps me keep it simple, and I love this brand. So just as a little quick, so I've got a couple hummingbirds that are going to be in the show. And then this is the London Eye for those of you that are missing London. And I have a cute little mushroom and the floral that I showed at the beginning with a little chinoiserie base. So that's what I have. And those are all the materials that I've used. The only other medium that I put on the top is a varnish. So very simple. But yeah, there you go. So that's what I have to share with you. And now it is Hannah's turn. Hannah, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Katrina. So yeah, I'm Hannah. So medium that I'm using for this show. I have created a series of 8x8 oil paintings of butterflies. The one that I'm holding up right now is pretty simple. They're all pretty simple, bright, simple colors. The one that I'm holding right now is called Joyful, and I painted these all on wood panels. Here's another one that I just called Glow. I've named all of my butterflies after specific happy feelings that I've had before. And so painting these in oil is a really big deal for me because I am normally a digital illustrator, but I love oil paint so much. So many of my favorite artists are oil painters, and I've been wanting for a long time to learn how to oil paint. And now that I've started learning and teaching myself, I was so excited to be able to sell my oil paintings for the first time actually in this show. And I varnished these with a satin varnish, so they look soft and not really shiny, but I'm very happy with how this is going. I was really intimidated by the medium of oil, but the more I use it, the more I love it. I'm so glad that I decided to do this. And yeah, so I have 8 different butterflies in the show. These are just a couple of them. They're not too complicated, but they mean a lot to me because they're happy and they represent my journey in using oil paint officially for the first time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. And for those of you that don't know, Hannah lives in Utah and we're actually new neighbors. So she just moved down the street. So we're both in Midway. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Hannah. And we're so glad that you are trying new things. And I love your butterfly series. They're absolutely stunning. Okay, let's go to Sarah. Sarah's going to talk to us about color palette. So Sarah, do you want to tell us where you're at? And we'll just let you take it away.
All right. Okay, thank you. My name is Sarah Maynard, and I live in Bountiful, Utah. So not too far from Katrina. I am really intrigued by color. I love color so much, and I learned a trick to my palette when I was in college, and I use basically the primary colors, and I use a warmer version and a cooler version for each one of them. So for example, for red, I would use crimson, which is a cooler version, and a cadmium red. And so I use red, yellow, blue, and I also use green, even though it's not one of the primary colors, but it's hard to make a good green. So I use, a viridian green and a sap green, and I don't use black, I don't use brown. I just don't do it. I make those colors with those colors. So my favorite to make brown is with alizarin crimson and sap green. Like that makes a really nice and beautiful brown. Let's see, I'll show you this painting here. So I've been doing a lot of paintings based off of black and white pictures, and this is one of them right here. So this is a painting it's an 8x10 painting of a woman sitting on a bench. And this pink right here is, it's an extra color that I use called quinacridone red, which is really nice, which I really love. And it makes a really bright pink that I just love to put in there. So I have a couple little colors that I like to pop with, which is quinacridone red. I also, since I do a lot of figure paintings, I use Naples yellow a lot in the skin color just to mellow out or whatever, and it goes with any kind of skin color, so not really a problem there. And also white is also a big deal. Titanium white is really, really thick and milky and really takes it down, so there's a good use for it, but I really like to use zinc white mostly. I think that's what it's called. And I I just think color really expresses these emotions that we all have, and it's a really strong part of my art that I use. And I think that's all I have. So thanks.
That's wonderful. I love hearing about the colors that you're using, Sarah. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's fun. And you guys, I have a confession, like half of the colors, I've never said them out loud. So I'm pretty sure I see them funny in my head. So it's so fun to have you describe the colors. I love it. Okay, well, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so we're going to have Jen talk to us about her why as an artist. So Jen, welcome. So happy to have you.
Hi, Katrina. My name is Jen Stefanek. I'm an artist living in Metro Detroit, and I'm here to talk about my why, which I don't often talk about because it's rooted in grief and loss, and that's not always a pleasant thing or an uplifting thing, considering my art is so vibrant and colorful and cheerful. But because I recently lost my father, my why has been more top of mind to me lately. In January of 2015, I lost my best friend Tracy to breast cancer. She was 42 years old, and she was insanely talented and creative. We met in art school at the University of Michigan, and she was always my biggest fan and champion, and constantly cheerleading me to pursue my creative self. But I had constantly put it on the back burner and made my family a priority. I worked, and I also felt like being a fine artist was something for my future self, that it would always be there waiting for me. And I worked as a graphic designer for a lot of years and would do an occasional drawing or painting. And that was enough to scratch my creative itches. But like I said, my family was my priority. But when she died, I became hyper aware of my own mortality and felt a sudden sense of urgency to figure it out and figure out how I was going to make this dream of becoming a fine artist a reality. So after her death, I went into a creative overdrive, and I dabbled in a bunch of different things, but nothing really stuck until I took a oil and cold wax medium class on a whim. And I totally fell in love and just kind of ran with it and made it my own thing, my own unique sense of style and creativity. And in doing so, I found a lot of healing and relief from the grief and loss of her through creating this artwork. And I actually sort of feel a spiritual connection to her whenever I'm painting. And there's a meditation and the processes of me mixing up the palette and following the steps to create a piece. And I think everything I make is created in her honor, that each piece feels like a little sacred offering to her memory. I'm here and she is not. She can no longer put beauty into the world, but I can. And I do it to spread joy and happiness through my artwork in her memory. And in a way, I think by honoring my talents, I'm also honoring the memory of all the artists and makers that can no longer create. So that's my why.
Wow. Okay. First of all, I just wish I was there so I could give you the biggest hug. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It was tough for me to get through. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, for those of you that can't see everyone else that's here in our meeting, we're all just obviously feeling a lot right now. And I can just say from all of us that we're all sending you so much love, especially because you just lost your father, but also it probably, you know, like you say, you feel your best friend when you're painting and when you're creating, but I'm sure that this has made it so much more intense lately and helped you probably just re-examine, you know, what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to create and to put your beauty and your light out into the world, because we all need it, Jen. And I definitely feel it when I see your art. I'm just so happy to know why. I'm feeling these great emotions when I see your art, and just, you're so loved, and we just want you to know that we're just so glad that we get to know you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Becky, that's a hard act to follow. I apologize. But we are excited to hear about your why. So take it away, Becky.
Well, I'm Becky Tobiasen. Actually, similar to Jen, art is very much of a healing experience for me. I haven't done art. Am I visible? Am I showing? Am I speaking? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry, I couldn't tell if it was working. Art, I haven't always done art. Actually, 22 years ago today, I became a mom, and that was a fast and furious and crazy ride. Still is. I have 8 children, and so still have 7 at home. So life is full and exciting and eventful all of the time, but there was something missing. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't feel like me anymore, and I felt like I had lost a part of me, and I thankfully started doing art again. And as I did art, I realized that that it was a creative, safe, healthy outlet for my emotions, which I'm a redhead, more redhead than my personality is much more redhead than my hair is, but I have very, very big emotions all the time. And when I paint, they come out in a good way. And when that happens, life is much better. I have a 16-year-old son that whenever I get wound up, he's like, "Hey Mom, you haven't painted for a while. I'll watch the kids, you go paint." And through that journey, we all have a divine, innate need to create. And it doesn't matter what you're creating, whether it's gardening or food or environments or experiences, but we need to create. And when we do those things, we become emotionally, spiritually, physically, we just become much healthier and happier. And it has been, I've been painting for 2 years now, and it's just been such a joyous experience. I would say anyone who wants to do it, join us, because it is just so much fun.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Becky. 20 years is a big break, and I'm so glad that you decided to come back to it. I'm so glad that, Jen, you didn't give in and you just jumped back in too. So I think a lot of us have had similar experiences where we, just like Becky says, we need to create. And so that's what's so special about this group. I think that we all understand that that's something that we need, not just for healing, but just for vitality, just for survival. So thank you so much for sharing about your why, ladies. That was really beautiful. Okay, now we're going to talk about inspiration, and we're going to start with Sage. Take it away, Sage.
Hi, I'm Sage Gallagher, and I'm talking about inspiration, which is kind of comes right from the why, doesn't it? So my collection is called 2020, The World is Still Beautiful. And we all had, what a year, right? It's been such a hard year in so many ways. But I had this kind of weird opportunity to go on an RV trip. So we started in Atlanta and drove through all the way back to Utah, where I live in St. George. And so along the way, I was just really touched by how now this is a hard time. Everyone was wearing masks. We were, distant from everybody. It was a lot of places weren't very crowded, but the world is still a beautiful place to be. And so that was what I have 6 different pieces in my collection. I started out in Florida, and that is of my daughter. Just this, the innocence of children. They can kind of know about all the hard things going on as much, although obviously they have to wear masks in school, etc. But that was fun for me, just to sit and be able to see her on the beach and see them, you know, with all the social distancing going on. And then I got to go to New Orleans as well. And so I have 3 paintings from New Orleans. In the French Quarter, it was so inspiring. I'd never been there before. And right now with all the hurricanes hitting there, it's just, I know it's very emotional to see the struggle that people have gone through, but the beauty that has been built there and the architecture was very inspiring to me. So I actually did 3 from New Orleans. And then, let's get over this way. This other one, you'll have to look on the video or on the website, but Texas is long and flat and beautiful. Lots of like windmills and cows, but I really like the silos here. Just really caught my eye. Just something so simple can be so beautiful still. And so I painted those. And then continuing on as we kept driving, a lot of driving, we went to Arizona. And I am always intrigued by and inspired by the just the Adobe kind of architecture. And I actually was born in Arizona, so maybe that's why, but I was really inspired by that. This is just a hotel that was across the street from where we were grabbing some food. But I was really inspired and touched that this year has been really difficult, I think for all of us, but being able to create and make this kind of little travel log in paint has been a really great opportunity for me. And so I hope you will be able to be inspired to eventually travel when this year is over and we all get back to normal. So thank you.
Thank you, Sage. It was so fun. Like I've been reading your descriptions and seeing your pieces, but I'm glad that you told us exactly how it happened, because I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. They went to a lot of places. Anyways, I think it's great too that you have something really positive to save as memories as a family, you know, during this year. So
yeah,
awesome.
It was kind of unusual that we got to take the trip, but my husband wanted to start a business renting it out. So there we go.
It's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so next we have Anna-E. Welcome.
Hi.
Take it away.
Hi. So just like many other artists, I am inspired by nature. I live in North Central Valley, California, amongst the orchards here. And so I find a lot of inspiration in nature. I tend to take walks most every morning through the walnut trees, and I get inspired by the color and the texture, the sunlight going through the branches, the shadows on the ground. I can walk around my yard and I get inspired by the flowers, even my chicken's feathers, you know, whatever it is. I find inspiration in nature around me. Nature like enlivens my senses, and it helps me to appreciate things, and then that inspires me. I get inspired by like the emotion that I feel in nature, all the different emotions. And then I also get inspired by the juxtaposition of things. I love contrast and a little bit of tension with color and texture and value. And so I like to look at those, like whether it's objects or out in nature, I tend to pick those things out in my mind, the differing colors and textures and values that I see. As far as being inspired with this collection that I did for the show, my series is called Between Here and There, and it was also inspired by, say, like Sage was, with a trip this past summer, and And normally when you are going on a trip or whatever, you're paying attention to where you're going, you know, and your end destination. But as we were driving, I was really paying attention to the long roads of Nevada, which can seem not beautiful, but I was just seeing so much beauty in that. And I decided to do a series based on the in-between places that we normally don't look at and focus on. And so like here's one piece that I am gonna have in the show, and they're all gonna be framed, but I don't have frames on them right now. But I mean, you can see the inspiration that I get from, I love shadows and light and the different varying textures, but then also being inspired by what's around me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that immediately makes you think of beauty, but I look for the beauty within those things, and that's where I get inspiration. So.
Thank you so much, Annie. That was great. And it's something just fun for people to consider. As one of Annie's latest series that she released was actually like close-ups of those branches of the orchards that she walks past every day. And so it was fun to see you go really detailed with that series, and then with this series to back up and to just really enjoy the spaces in a really broad sense. And so, yeah, it's great. It was fun to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Katrina.
Yeah. Okay. So now we get to talk about making time to create. I think that as artists, you guys can raise your hand if you agree, but I think that one of the most common questions that we get as artists, and many of us are mothers, actually pretty much all of us I think are, I think that people are always saying, how do you find time to create, right? Raise your hand if you've had that question on a regular basis. Yeah, I'm just telling you that can't see all of them. Hannah's on her way. She's on her way to motherhood there. She's like, no, Katrina's crazy. No, she's still a newlywed. So anyways, but most of us get that question, and it's something that we're all trying to make time for. And so Sydney and Candace are going to tell us about that. So Sydney, why don't you go ahead and start? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Sydney Lund, and I am a palette knife oil painter. And I mostly paint landscapes and florals. And I'll just quickly show a piece that is going to be in this show. This is a 10 by 10 piece, and it's called Storm Over Wildflowers. So you can look at that on my Instagram page at sydney.lundart if you are just listening to this in a podcast. And I am a mom. I have a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then I am 34 weeks pregnant with my third. So it definitely affects my time to create, and it is always changing. So before this year, I've always been a night owl all growing up. So my main time to paint was in the evenings when I would put my kids to bed. And that was kind of my me time, my relaxed time. And usually my bedtime was between 12 and 1 o'clock. So that was kind of my biggest time to create before this year. And then this year, becoming pregnant at the beginning of it, it kind of completely zapped me of my energy, my motivation, my creativity. It was all gone in the beginning, just when you're not feeling good. And it was really, really hard to get myself to create, and I kind of dropped it for a little while. And then also with COVID happening, my daughter wasn't in school anymore. And my 3-year-old decided to stop napping. It's the worst day ever when he wouldn't take naps for me anymore. So I didn't have the afternoon time. I was too tired by 9 o'clock at night to do any painting. But thankfully, halfway through my pregnancy, I started feeling a little bit better. And it was able to change now that my daughter's in 2nd grade, so she's in school full time, and then my son is in preschool 2 days a week. So I get an afternoon time 2 days a week, and also my sister lives nearby, and we do a cousin swap day. So I get a 3rd day where she takes my kids and watches them while I have more time to paint, and it is so wonderful. Definitely utilize Saturdays when my husband's home and I can wake up. So I'm still pretty tired in the evening, so I haven't gotten my nighttime back, which is my absolutely favorite time to paint, but I know that that will come back at some point. And it's creativity and doing that is a necessity for me. And even though this year I haven't been able to put as much time into it, I know that it's just a phase of life and it will change. Definitely might be a little bit harder when I have a newborn, but I know that I'll get past that stage too. And I just know that creating art is what I want to do full time, and it will, yeah, change throughout my whole entire life, but I'll just have to roll with it and get in that time when I can.
Oh, well, Sydney, thank you so much. Just sending lots of love to you too. And if you ever feel like you're giving yourself excuses for not doing the things that your heart really wants to do most, whether it's creating or walking through the orchards or taking time with loved ones, Sydney is a perfect example that it's okay to roll with the seasons of life. It's okay to realize that things happen and we have to reevaluate when to do things and when to find that time. But if Sydney can do it, we can all do it, right? Talk about good transition from inspiration. That was really inspiring, Sydney. And I love the idea of a cousin swap. What a great idea. There's so many good things. In fact, we could probably do a whole episode with our group and talk about ways that we make time to create. But thank you for sharing those, because I think that most of us realize that every time we find a new little time to create, something happens and we have to carve it somewhere else, right? And that's just part of life. And I think that part of being a creative is creating time so that we can be creative. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we're just so happy for you that you get to have this new little baby in your home really soon. So congratulations again. And let's hear from Candace. Candace, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having us. My name is Candace McLean. I live here. I am actually one of Katrina's neighbors too. I live in the Wasatch Back in Heber City. And so I have 5 children. And my journey to art is a little different in that I've had a lot of iterations of myself. So the whole idea of seasons of life really speaks to me. So I have a degree in studio art and had a lot of pressure from my family to do something more admirable and ended up getting my master's in occupational therapy and was a practicing occupational therapist back on the East Coast for years. And then I moved out here in 2010, and my husband, for my husband's career, and I'm an only child, and quickly realized that at least one of my parents was pretty significantly ill with dementia. So we moved both of my parents out in 2011, and shortly thereafter discovered that actually both of them had dementia, and one of them was having a multi-infarct dementia type thing. So she quickly had a stroke right after she got out here. So I spent a lot of time kind of taking care of everybody. And then my dad died a year later, and then my mom, and it's this whole evolving story of seasons. And there wasn't time really to create in a way that I wanted to, that I had been chasing, like, trying to kind of being where Sydney is. And then my parents both passed away, and I was really, really struggling. And a friend asked me to do something called the 100-Day Project. And I decided I would do something. I'd always been an oil painter. I decided I'd do watercolor. And I did 100 days of watercolor. And what I discovered in that process, I started to question, so part of the 100-Day Project is that you create and then you post. And I posted every day, and it was really intimidating. I hadn't publicly created art. And what I started to question, do I have time for this? you know, can someone else, can, like, you know, I have to make someone dinner, or I have to wash this, or organize this closet, or, I mean, I think as women, we're constantly bombarded with all of the musts. And ultimately, what I came to realize is I was hustling for my worth. And I had been hustling for my worth since back when I left college and didn't go after my art career, but instead did what was proper, or what was, you know, Brene Brown has a saying that shame is the most powerful emotion. It's the fear that we're not good enough. And so I spent, you know, a long time chasing being good enough. And so finally, to be able to like give up the organized closets and, you know, shed the doing the dishes to my kids. And I now have kids that make dinner. Like, they're like, mom's in the studio, someone's got to make dinner, and they make a beautiful dinner, like better than I would have made it. So I feel like somewhere they've learned. I mean, we've coached certainly and said, this is the expectation. We have a Sunday night meeting. We kind of talk about everyone's schedules and assign things. And that has made, you know, that has allowed me to, I can now do an 8-hour day in the studio, which is huge. But I had to give up this hustling for my worth. I had to give up, you know, no one gets there by themselves, you know, like it wasn't my responsibility solely to get us to the next day. Everyone needs to contribute. So this, for me, it was the biggest thing that allows me to make time as a mind shift. So.
Oh, thank you so much for just explaining all that and just giving us the details, because I think that everyone here, and especially those that are listening, I think this is something that we totally understand, that we ourselves have had to struggle with, you know, that hustling for our worth. And even though we may have taken a different journey than you, Candace, I think everyone here can say, yeah, it's something that we've all battled with. And I think a lot of us find that it's something that we're still battling. Is it going to be something we have to pursue our whole lives? Very, very likely. But to realize that there are other women out there hustling for it as well is such a comfort. And yeah, just anyways, so glad that you were able to share all those things, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Candace. Okay, so we're going to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to talk about how where you live influences what you create. And so I'm excited to hear from Alicia and then Breck. So Alicia, welcome.
Hi, I'm Alicia B. Whitman, and I paint landscapes really inspired by the places I lived. And when I first started painting professionally, I remember deciding to do that I was gonna follow this dream, but then being like, but what do I paint? Like, I don't have a teacher telling me what subject I should use here. They're not setting up a still life and saying paint that. And I really didn't know what to do. And 10 years before, I had gone on an art tour in Europe as part of school. And so I was like, oh, okay, Europe is artsy, I'll paint Europe. Like, literally, that's the depth of my thinking there. And so I did, and I painted a lot of beautiful Italian scenes, and they actually sold really well. And whenever a friend would go to Italy or something, I'd use their photos. And it was exciting at first, but I slowly grew to just hate it. And I had to stop and be like, why am I hating this? I love art, I love painting. Why is this not bringing me joy? And I realized it just wasn't relevant to my life at all anymore. I had 2 little babies, and over the years added 3 more to our household, and I just wasn't getting to Europe very often. Haven't been since that one trip, you know, way long time ago. And so I didn't feel it, and I actually grew to kind of resent it, and it was making me unhappy with my art and unhappy with my life. And so I had to take some steps back, which was kind of a hard thing to do, because like I said, the paintings were selling well, and we really needed the money the time with our family so young and my husband in grad school. And so it's scary to be like, well, if I paint something else, people might not like it. And that's something artists have to face sometimes. But I realized I needed to paint something relevant to me in my life, and something that really meant something to me. And I love outdoors. I love being outside. We do a lot of hiking and camping as a family. And I live in Oregon, surrounded by forests with really tall trees and beautiful cloudy skies, about an hour from the mountains and an hour from the beach. And so I started to paint these places that we were camping at and hiking at. And so my paintings are usually filled with a lot of green and a lot of blue, really tall trees. This series that is part of this show that you can see behind me, if you're looking at YouTube, is a whole bunch of different paintings where there are younger trees in front surrounded by the older, taller trees around them, just kind of in the forest. And as I started to paint this, it was like, my heart was like, yes, like this is what you should be painting. This is what you love. And I think that comes across when you really love what you're painting and you're connected to it in a way. It helps, well, for one, it helps me as I'm doing the painting, but it also helps people as they view it to feel that, and to, I think they get more excited about it and have more connection when I have that story of, oh, I painted this based on this trip this hiking trip we took. And as I was walking through the forest and just being impressed by that comfort of the surrounding taller trees, I have the stories that back it up, and I have the feeling and emotion that is a really important part of art. So where I live definitely affects what I choose to paint. And it's fun too. Occasionally I will go on a trip. Like last year we went to southern Utah, and suddenly I had a bunch of red rocks in my paintings pop up. So it also becomes kind of a bit of a travel journal when I do get out. But when I don't get out, the inspiration doesn't dry up because I can paint where I live.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And no, it's wonderful too, because I think you're absolutely right. I think whatever your passion is, whether it's in art or other parts of life, it can either invigorate us or drain us completely. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of us needed to hear that today. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, I hope that you go and see this latest series of Alicia's and enjoy those smaller trees and take the wisdom from her. Maybe in this instance, Alicia, you can be our older tree telling us to go ahead and follow your heart. And I just really appreciate that. So thank you for sharing that. And Berg, tell us about how you've been inspired by where you live.
Thank you. I live in Cottonwood Heights. I actually grew up in Salt Lake, but we spent about 15 years away with my husband's schooling. And we moved back 3 years ago, and I didn't realize how much I had missed the mountains. And so the mountains have become a very big part of what I paint. And this is a piece that will be in the show. It's an 8x8 watercolor, but it doesn't require glass because it's been mounted to a frame and protected. But it's the shapes and the colors and the patterns and the shadows and everything on the surrounding mountains, in the canyons, everything are just so beautiful. And trying to capture that's my favorite part. There's a lot of different variety to the state, and so it's fun to pull out the red rock and to do some things like that. But there's also, for those of us that grew up here, there's also this connection we have to the mountains that I feel. And sometimes it's just a backdrop for memories, but sometimes it's an experience, it's a bigger part of an experience. And so I feel like there's a lot of connection with our surroundings that way. And it's been really fun to paint it and to see people's reactions.
Absolutely. I love your mountains so much, Breck. And I think that, I'm just really happy to hear a little bit of the background, because I've always been really drawn to them. When I first moved here from California and I went to school in Provo, my mom was taking me through, I think I must have just moved in, and she said, when you come out of class and you look up and you see the mountain, she said, it always gave me comfort, and I hope it gives you comfort too. And it totally did. And so I think a lot of us completely connect with what you're talking about. And it's amazing too that you were able to go away and still come back and be able to reconnect and find this need to share that with others, because I think that it's true. I think, even for those that probably grew up in Texas, Hannah, is this you? maybe? No? Okay. Well, anyways, in the big spaces.
Florida. It was Florida, yeah.
Okay, so Florida. So when Sage talked about going through and seeing the silos, you know, there's people that find that comfort in just the open spaces. And definitely in Florida, there's a lot of open spaces down by the beaches and the grass and the wetlands. But I think it is a benefit to be able to create with the things that you find the most comforting, because I think it'll just help others. So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that, Breck. Okay, so next we're going to actually talk about tools. And we've got some ladies, Crystal and Jenny, are going to talk about the tools that they've used with their pieces in this show. And so we're excited. So Crystal, welcome.
Thank you. All right, I'm such a nerd about tools. I totally geek out over all of this stuff. So, but I am going to keep it to 3 minutes, or everybody's going to try and tell me to stop talking. So, first of all, the pieces that I did for this show, I did a little flower collection. They're 5x5 oil on cradled panels, so they're 1.5 inches thick. It's not my normal. I'm typically identify as a figurative artist. So some of the tools that I'm going to show you, maybe I don't use so much for this kind of work, but for my figurative work, they're really important. First of all, for the smaller work like these, I have a travel easel. This is an Edge Pro Gear travel easel that goes onto a tripod, and it makes it easy to get out and paint or to just work on smaller pieces in the studio. Some of the things I can't actually show you because they're too big and I can't move my camera around, but I do have a big wooden studio easel that I use for my bigger pictures. And I'm going to show you some of my favorite things. I use tripods for so many things in here, and they're pretty interchangeable. So this is one of my newer tricks. And I have a palette. This is a New Wave palette. It's a wooden palette, and it attaches to this cool nifty easel called a leader easel. And it just attaches to one of my tripods, so I can have it right up against whatever I'm working on. But I'm able to see my paint mixtures up at the same angle, in the same light as the painting I'm working on. And when I'm working on flesh tones especially, that it's really important with those subtle shifts that, it's easier to see. So that's one of my favorite things. Some other kind of neato things for us painters. I'm holding trying to describe this and realizing it's not very easy. But for people who paint out of tubes of like oils, and if your paint comes in a tube, just like the toothpaste, you try and squeeze the last bit out of it. So I have this cool like roller mechanism that squeezes the paint to the end. So that's one of my favorites. I always have knives around. This is a very cool thing. This is called a divider, and it's kind of a handy tool to help you draw. So that's an important one. Will recognize this. This is pretty standard issue. This is where we keep our solvent. So it makes it easy to, it's a metal can with a lid, and it's got like a sifter thing inside that helps all of the oil particles fall to the bottom and keep the solvent at the top clean. Brushes are a really big deal. So I wish you could see this, but I'm going to try and explain it. If you guys have ever seen the little three-tiered cards from IKEA, the metal ones, I use rolls. I use one of those in here, and I have all of my stuff that I want to grab quickly in there. Brushes are the artist's, most important tool, I think. And rosemary brushes from, I order them from England. They are my favorite. I have all different kinds, but those are artists' best friends. One of the cool things that I have attached to my cart is there are these two like metal insert magnetic clamps that attach to a paper towel holder. So I have that right here too. So really I just try to set my studio up so I have everything really close to me. And you can see my other closet, but my favorite new toy is a freezer that fits right in my closet. It's a small chest freezer, and for an oil painter that means that I can take my palette and any brushes that maybe I didn't clean so well, and I can just throw them into my freezer and come back to them, and they're still wet. So it extends the drying period, or the drying period, and or also on paintings if you want it to be a certain amount of dry, if you don't want it to dry too fast. So those are kind of my favorite things. I have a whole bunch more favorite things. That's probably good for now.
Oh, Crystal, that was so much fun. And I love that you've made space for your freezer in your studio. That's so great. And also yeah, you'll have to tell us more about some of those things, but that was really, really fun. It was fun to hear about those. And thank you so much for sharing about your tools. Thank you for being a tool geek. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Okay, so then we also have Jenny. Jenny, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Jenny Trail Schaefer, and I live in West Orange, New Jersey, which is just due west of New York City. So I love what Crystal just shared about her oil tools, and I love the freezer because I am more predominantly a watercolor artist right now because of the struggles of maintaining tools as an oil painter and juggling motherhood and damaging brushes. So I'm going to take a note of that. But I have really shifted to watercolor over the past 5 years or so. And my work that I've been working on for the past couple of years in particular are a series called Teascapes. And the works that are in this show are a subset of that series, and they're called Take a Seat. So at some point I had been incorporating chairs into my work, which I'll explain a little bit about the tools. And they're layered salvaged tea packages that are transferred onto the paper and then watercolored on top. So it's a little bit, it's not exactly collage, it's more of a transfer, but it's a mixed media piece, predominantly watercolor. So with my tools, with the pieces, so my watercolors have grown out of a variety of mishmashes of supplies. I worked at Pearl Paint for a few years before they went out of business, before I became a full-time artist, and I collected a lot of tools, and eventually I settled on working predominantly with, there we go, now it's in the light, M. Graham, which is out by your neck of the woods, ladies, out in in Oregon. And it's a watercolor that I really love because it has a consistency that comes right out of the tube in a way that it almost reminds me of oils, and it's a very brushable out of the tube kind of paint. So I like to be very expressive with my watercolors and my paints. So I feel like I can work a little more directly and at times more heavily without having to water it down. The pieces are, the current piece, most of the pieces, shy of one, are painted on Nujabi paper, which is a handmade paper from India that I stumbled upon at our local art store. And I really love the way it's deckled, which is the roughness. And so what I've found I do, and I use, let's see. So I mount the paper onto cradled board. So I buy the cradled boards from Ampersand. And then when I'm done with the piece, I use a hake brush, which you can see on YouTube as you're watching. If you want to check that out, a hake brush is a sheep's hair brush. It's very wide, used a lot in Asian approaches of watercolor, but it's great for applying glue. So I use a soft gel by Golden, and that gets brushed on the back of the paper and the board. And then I clamp, or actually just weight down the paper to the cradled panel using wax paper to protect it. And then when I'm done, and I use the Golden soft gel as well to transfer the tea bag. So I save all of these tea bags and they get opened up. So this is an opened tea package. So this gets coated with the glue, and then I lay it down on the paper. And then most typically what I do is I let it dry just a little bit, and then I'm peeling off the wax liner of the package, and then what remains is just the graphic image left over from the tea packaging. And you can see it more clearly in some of the paintings than in others. I don't know how visible it is in that one, but it's in there. And then when the pieces are done, let me see. Oh, I also burnish the glue with a bone folder. This is actually something that I discovered, I think, in art school when I was bookmaking. So it's a really useful tool. It's coated with glue now, but I use it all the time to rub out and get rid of air bubbles as I'm layering stuff in. And then at the very end, everything gets wired. So I have lots of framing tools on hand. Everything gets wired for hanging, and I do UV coat the paper so that it can be hung, because it is watercolor, but it can be hung either unframed because it's cradled, or put in a float frame and hung up that way.
Awesome. Oh, this is so fun. Jenny, thank you. It's been great. Jenny and I have been friends for a long time, and so I kind of got to see the whole Teascapes come into play, but I didn't know exactly how you did it. So it was extremely fascinating to hear about how the image remains and then the wax, you're peeling off the wax. That was, wow, really fascinating. I love your use of tools. Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was amazing.
Welcome. Thank you.
So now we get a special treat. Annie Priest is going to give us a tour of her studio. So Annie, we're so happy that you're going to share with us your studio. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here and share it. I have an in-home studio. So out here, which is kind of a wreck, is my house. So when I'm working, I can still hear what's going on with my children. And then I'll turn you around here so you can see what I see. Okay, so this is my studio. Come in the door, and I wanted a lot of good light, and so that I can see what my kids are doing if they're outside. So I have a good view of my yard. My kids like to play outside, and I like being able to work and see what they're doing. Then over here is kind of my work area. This is where I tend to sit and paint or stand and paint, depending on what I'm working on. So I have my easel, my paints. I keep them in the freezer as well, usually. So I totally second that with Crystal. And I also have the same 3-tiered cards that like pretty much every artist I know has. And it stores like my paints for when it runs out, packing materials, things like that. Everything is really close at hand. Brushes, knives, all that good stuff. And let's see, you can see a lot of storage in my studio, little bookcases and drawers and shelves, because there's just a lot of stuff that you need to have handy. A drawer for extra paint, or if you have anything printed, or receipts for your business, things like that. There's just a lot of stuff involved in creating art. So there's a lot of storage. Let's see, printing area. I have 2 tables. This is mostly where I work, but if I do computer work, I usually do it here. As you can see, it's kind of a mess with some watercolor, because when I'm painting, my kids often want to paint if they're home. With quarantine, they were home a lot, so this is where they sit and make a mess, and it's lovely. These are the 2 pieces, by the way, 2 of the pieces that are in the show. They're oil on panels, as well as a still life that's up here, and this little cilantro guy. So in addition to that, I love having this wall of things can dry, but also I like being surrounded by my artwork. I like being able to see it. You can see in Katrina's, she has a wall behind her with her shelves, and I just love that. It's so fun to be surrounded by the beautiful things you create. So I love seeing all of that, and stuff comes and goes, and sometimes if I'm tired of looking at it, I'll put it away and pull out something else and move it around, rearrange it. It's always in rearrangement. Over here I have a sink because I've learned it's nice to be able to make a mess and be like just a few steps away from a sink. This is a sink that is actually from our old farmhouse that was here. We bought a farmhouse from the 1880s and lived in it for several years, then tore it down. And this was from the 50s edition of a kitchen. And I took it home to where we were renting while we were building and painted it dark blue because I love dark blue. But it has like the draining boards on either side, and it's heavy, heavy, heavy. And I just love it so much. It makes me really happy. Our floor is like, I love that it's kind of it reminds me of like my high school art room floors, you know, kind of this tile, and it's so super easy to clean up, which is essential. And then I have a chair in my studio. Like obviously I have other chairs, you know, that I've painted and whatever to like work in. But this chair in particular is a comfy blue velvet chair, and I sit in it a lot. I sit in it to, if I like have a piece I'm considering whether it's done, I can sit in it and consider whether it's finished, or if there are things I want to change, like kind of, it gives me some time to think. It's like a thinking chair for me. It's also really great for like, you know, taking photos because look how pretty. So it gives me a nice place to sit and think about what I'm working on. And yeah, I think that's about it. Let's see. Turn around again. There.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. You know, Annie, I've been to Annie's studio, and it's really a magical place for so many reasons. Number one, just like she said, it's right off of the kitchen. And if you're not following Annie yet, she loves to share what she's cooking, because what she's cooking and creating in the kitchen also influences what she creates in her studio. And she's done a whole series on chairs. So it's very appropriate that she has a big chair in there. So you can tell that Jenny and Annie both have chair series. So that's really fun. And I love to have a cozy chair in my studio. I learned that because sometimes you just need to do something different. You need to have a break from what you're working on. And so it's nice to take a minute and sit on a cozy chair. I remember a friend asked me not too long ago, she said, we're going to finish the basement and we're going to make a studio. And what do you think? What are the main things that you think need to be in the studio? And two of them were exactly what Annie said. I said, have shelves to display things and to dry. You definitely want lots of shelves, and then have a cozy place to sit. It could be a couch, it could be a bed. Just have something so that you can relax from time to time. And I love your sink, Annie. That is such a treasure. And I know that that was really such a special thing that you're able to bring that from your other house. That was awesome. Thank you so much for giving us a little tour. Okay, so now we're on our very last topic. So get excited. Our last topic, our ladies are going to tell you about the subjects that they have been creating for this series. And so Annie Isaacson, why don't you start, and then we'll get to hear from Joanne Marie. So Annie, take it away.
Hey, hi, I'm Annie Isaacson, and I live in St. George. And my subject matter that I like to paint is people and animals. And mostly dancers. I like to paint dancers. And it's funny because my parents taught dance forever. So I grew up dancing from age 4. And I've always loved children, loved teaching children's dance. And that's been really fun. So my parents had dance studios all over Utah Valley called the Lyman Dance School in the day. And they also taught at BYU. So I've been around little children and watching them dance my whole life, which has been really fun. Then when I'm older, I went at age 50, I went back to school and got an art degree. And the professor made us hone in on one subject. And I thought, I know I don't want to do still life. I don't want to be painting vases for a whole semester. And so it's just natural to paint dancers. And I was teaching dance in California at the time, so it was perfect because I had all the subjects I could possibly want to take pictures of to paint. So that was really fun. I started out with oils, but having to transport oil paintings back and forth to school constantly destroys your car. And so I switched to acrylics, and I love doing acrylics. which is really fun. I think that it's, I don't know, by having taught dance, when I paint a dancer, I'm constantly correcting in my mind. I have a hard time painting someone that doesn't have the right posture or the right hand. And there's been several times in school, I would start painting a dancer and realize her foot was wrong. And I would just have to stop. I would have to start all over and get a different picture to go from, because I've been trained to correct the proper foot position in ballet. And so it's been kind of fun, but it also is really been nice how my life it went from dance to painting and then back to dance, because after I got my degree in California, I was able to go back to the school that I taught at, and they had me start painting their dancers. So every other year I go back and paint. They have what's called a synthesis. It's NCDC, Northern California Dance Conservatory. And I go back and take pictures of their dancers and have 2 months to paint whoever I choose and however many I choose. And then I go back and put the people up that I painted, and I sit back. They don't even know who I am. And that's a challenge, because there's not a parent in the world that's going to buy a painting of their kid, their daughter, their son dancing that doesn't look like them. So it's really kind of nerve-wracking, but it's also a really good challenge for me, because I sell quite a few, but it's a lot of work, because you know that it has to be exact, or the parents are gonna be like, that doesn't look like her. So that's been really fun. I've really enjoyed it, but I've gone, because I did so many large paintings in school, I did so many large oversized paintings, I want to kind of move those out and do more commission paintings, because I do like the challenge. I do like capturing the twinkle in a child's eye or the posture in a dancer. And so that's what I really am trying to move more towards, instead of just painting randomly. And I don't have kids at home anymore, so I do have the time, but I still feel like my time is still busy. But I do have this one that will be in our show coming up. Oh no. It's a little dancer, of course, and it's called Practicing Posture. And she's sitting in a butterfly position, and I love this because this little child is like 3 years old. And look at her posture. So that makes me happy as a dance teacher that she's doing it correctly. And it's just fun to capture. And then this is a little girl that will also be in the show. She's on the beach, and this is a little girl from Florida, at the beach. And it's funny because Sage and I both painted someone on the beach, and I think her daughter was in Florida as well. But anyway, that's about it. I just love what I do. It brings me joy, and it is still a challenge and pushes me a lot to try to capture the look of a specific person so that they're happy with it. So, but that's what makes me happy.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that, Annie. I had no idea that you were having to correct everyone within the paintings. That's so cute. And then you have the adults correcting you, right? It's a whole series of corrections.
Yes.
No, it's so fun. I love that you found joy in that. I'm so glad that you decided to go back to art. I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing us about your backstory about dancers and painting. That's beautiful. Okay, our final lady, we're excited to introduce you to Joanne Marie. So welcome, Joanne Marie.
Hello. My name is Joanne Marie Milner, and I'm from Canada. Specifically a city called Medicine Hat. And I love saying that because it's so strange. But I'm kind of the international one of the group, I guess. I typically paint portraits or the figure, and that kind of dates back to art school. There are two things that I was really scared about going to school. And one was drawing, and the other one was drawing people. And I had kind of a bad experience in a painting class. I was trying to paint so beautiful, and my professor told me that I was sacrificing the paint to illustrate. And now, like, looking back, I can see what he was saying, but at the time I got so frustrated. I didn't want to paint, and I ended up putting paper all over my floor and splattering it around, and he loved it. My marks went up, and I thought, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I took so many drawing classes, and I really grew to love the figure and just the subtle lines and curves in the figure. So that shows up a lot in my work. But for this project, I wanted to, because I'm from Canada, I wanted to paint more of a portrait of where I live. And so I was thinking about some things that are important to me. I also really love nature. I love camping. I love hiking. I love noticing the little wild flowers along the path. And I was thinking about that. And Medicine Hat is kind of a unique place in Canada because it's very hot and dry. I just want to paint these beautiful cactus blooms that we get here because I think it's really unique. So I painted a bunch of different wildflowers that I see regularly or that are in our area. And so this is the I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's the pincushion cactus flower. I also really like painting bold colors, so I try to incorporate that. And it's really neat seeing the cactus blooms because sometimes they can be a little hidden in the tall grass, but and I think that's another thing that drew me to the subject matter was these tiny flowers or flowers that you don't see very often or that are hard to see, and just like paint them big on the surface and really just bring people's attention to them. So another one that I wanted to paint was the, I feel like the lighting is really bad, is there we a wild rose. And this one I chose because it's our provincial flower. And we see them all the time, everywhere along the paths. And there's another flower. This one is so unusual, and I wouldn't have known about it unless my husband's parents are wildlife nature photographers. So number one, I had access to a lot of imagery of wildflowers, but I knew all these neat things about the different flowers in the area. And this one is called the evening star or the sand lily. It's not coming up very well. These are incredible blooms that are just spectacular, but the flower is closed for most of the day. And then at about 7 o'clock in the evening, they bloom open. And then they close at about 11 o'clock. So the bloom is only out for a very short time. And I find that so fascinating. So I feel like it was fun to just explore the different wildflowers in our area. And I tried to use a lot of the same language that I do in my figurative work. A lot of bold color, high contrast. I really like playing with water. And I also like to have a glow a lot of the time in my work. Because I think I really love the human spirit and this inner beauty. I always want to show or portray an inner beauty, and I wanted that to come forward in these flowers too. So that's what I have done.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Joanne Marie. I don't know. I'm guessing that everyone wants to come visit you now. I definitely have always wanted to come see Medicine Hat from knowing you, but now I have to come see those special flowers that only bloom from 7 to 11. That's amazing. It's like straight out of a movie. That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you to all of you for being here and for sharing your hearts and sharing all these little bits about your practice and your pieces that are going to be in this show. It is so exciting to get to be with all of you. And I just want to remind everyone that the show opens October 1st, and keep an eye out for our emails because you'll be the first ones to be able to jump in there. I will go ahead and I'm going to share the websites of every one of these ladies today and also their Instagram. So make sure that you go follow them on Instagram and go over to their website and sign up for their email, and then come join us on the 1st and you can come see the whole collection. And I'm just really excited. These are spectacular ladies. I've just enjoyed so much getting to know each of them, and I'm just so happy to introduce a few of them to you today. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to have you all unmute because I want to be able to tell everyone goodbye from all of you. And sorry, my kids are coming home from school, so we might hear some of them as well. But yeah, if you guys don't mind unmuting, I just want to send lots of love from all of our Candy Colored Club ladies, and we're excited to present to you the Candy Club Collective. Thank you for listening and watching today, and goodbye from all of us.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.